Google, type like this: interview questions by Vishnu Prasad. Interview questions by Vishnu Prasad. Okay, there you will get a site, Google site only. Like I created a Google site. So I create a Google site because of when I see this Google site, I got this one idea. I will create it, but I unable to create as he created. Okay, like this much. Okay, I created one. Okay, few days back it is down. So that is few years back, like 3-4 years back it is down for some days. Later it is up. Then I don't know. So some of our students said, okay, sir, it is again up. So this is the link. Look at here. I'm also writing that kind of stuff. Ticketing related information won't be there, but technical related, you can easily open in your browser, and you can view certain questions from it. So you can compare the previous batch questions and find out answers. That is very easy to do it. For example, see it is, what is an operating system? See, one question is covered. Type of operating systems. What is a server? What different type of servers? What is VPN server? Okay, guys, better not to go for a very big things like this. These big things, if you read, no problem. If you can able to read it, remember it, not at all a problem. Okay, but if you are unable to read big things and unable to remember, and you take lot of time to read and remember these things, understanding these things, don't go through it. So person to person capacities are different, capabilities are different. I'm telling it is a secondary important, not primary important points. Okay, of course it is important. See, in a 2000 server, Active Directory is introduced. In NT server, no Active Directory, no forest, no site kind of concept it is. But those concepts are came in a 2000. In 2003, still the concept is there with a certain additional things in it. Okay, so yesterday we discussed about Active Directory. See, this is a very small question. I given a statement, go through my statement as well as these statements also. Okay, so practice and try to tell an answer very easy way, understandable way. Okay, few things you don't understand. For example, what is tree? What is forest? You don't know. So it's okay, no problem. Just read it and leave it. Just read it and leave it. Few things we covered and few things are important. So we covered. We covered what is a group policy. Okay, so we don't know what it is. No problem. What is default gateway? We discussed that one. So read the default gateway. Okay, so you don't know what is a master operation roles. Leave it, no problem. Okay, what is SCSI? Storage types, SCSI. Okay, that is important. IP addresses, you know that one. Read it once again. You know the what is the routers, hardware router, software routers part. You know the firewalls. Okay, you know the what is domain controller, what I told about it. Okay, bridges, gateway and router. What is the difference between gateway and router? Just now only POP3 and SMTP servers. Okay, Active Directory partition, you don't know, just leave it, no problem. Okay, so look at the question first, read the question and go through the answer. If it is very easy, then go for it. Broadcasting, multicasting, unicasting. What is the use of ping command? See, that is we discussed it. Okay, so what is a printer? Different type of printers. What different type of backups? Okay, so trace RT. What is a trace RT? That is we discuss. So here you can see like what is a tunneling form. Okay, some new things are there here. So we don't know, I don't know. So like leave it, no problem at all. Okay, what is clustering? So you want to know, like you can go through it. As I said, right? So if you having an idea about it, no problem. If you don't have any idea, you will never discuss it. You are not able to understand it. So leave it, no problem. But what I'm trying to say is, try to See IPv4, IPv6. Read only questions, and you are interested, read it. Okay. If you are interested, read it. See, this is a network part is created. What is peer-to-peer? What is client and server? That is we discuss. So important. Different type of networks. Type of networks or scope of network. LAN, WAN, CAN, MAN kind of stuff. What is NIC? We discussed it. Different type of cables. In that too, twisted pair cables we discussed more. Okay. So like what is twisted pair cable? UTP, STP type of cables. Straight cable, cross cable, we didn't discuss, but it is there. Different topology, bus topology, star topology, ring topology, mesh topology, hybrid topologies. Different terminologies like Ethernet, ATM, frame relay, FTM, hub, switch, router, gateway, repeater, IP address, MAC address, subnet mask. Okay. So network ID things, NAT PAT kind of stuff we didn't discuss. I will discuss that one now. So we'll go through NAT PAT now. Okay. Proxy server we discussed that one. Firewall. Okay. Ports, OSA layer C, OSA layers. It's a only single page, guys. Single page. So within a single page itself, we can able to understand so many things in this one. Okay. So some are not understandable. Some are you are unable to get it. So not at all a big problem. DHCP related information is there, DNS related information is also there. Okay. If you don't get it, it's not a big deal. Next, in the left side, you can see the things like what is RID, what is port numbers, what are the run commands, what is DFS, what is LDAP, what is Lotus, okay, what is SUS, Windows Server Update Service. I didn't write in that one, so I written WDS, not SUS, but like this. Okay, activation killer. Okay, Microsoft fix it kind of stuff, but the notes is little very older, not little older. It is very old type, but it covers main important, very basic things, both networking side and operating system and basics of server side also. It is covering. So that's why I am try to tell. Also sharing to your WhatsApp group. So check it properly. Okay. Technical help for engineers. Where it is. So like that. And already I told, so go through the previous batch questions. I shared 4 pages of questions, 4 documents I shared. If you want, you can send it questions also. Okay, that's the point. And as I said, what is a private IP address? What is NAT PAT? Also, we'll discuss now. So few topics, random topics wise, we'll discuss. Private IP addresses. So before going to private IP address, guys, IP addresses, IPv4 having classes, right? Having classes. What are the classes? Class A, class B. Okay, you can also chant, guys, if you are able to. Yes. Class C. To communicate in the network, we use these classes, right? Not communicate, exactly say, we can assign an IP address to the system in a class A, class B, class C only, because class D is a multicast address, class E is a R&D type. So we don't use class D and class E. So don't get confused. There is a totally 5 classes. One is totally 5 classes. Okay. So you can able to tell which class it is like that. So what are the IP address classes? It is 0 to 127. In some textbook 1 to 126. There is a reason behind. Already I told. What is the reason? We don't use 0.0.0.0. It is reserved for a certain purposes, and also we don't use these IP addresses for communication, or exactly say we cannot assign these IP addresses to any adapter, it won't accept. Next is 127.0.0.0.1 is loopback or a local host address. Local host is a name of your computer by default. Whatever the computer name, for example, PC1, PC2, PC3, PC4, but each PC by itself, it is a local host. It is simply say myself. My name is Latif, myself, myself. Okay, my name is Latif. Latif, if you are calling me like a Latif, okay, Latif, what is this? That is my name. Okay, but if I am calling myself, that is like a local host. Okay, next. Anyway, 127 dot any this particular series we don't use it. Okay, that's why that is 1 to 126 is also correct. 128, guys, you can tell no problem. I think people are sleeping. 224 to
239
very good.
to 255.
Okay. So we use class A, class B, class C because it's a unicast addresses. Okay. So default subnet mask of a class A is this one. You know, last time one batch, not exactly, mm, not exactly your batch, but they got one question is so direct question like the question is like, what is class B range or class C subnet mask? So sequence order you remember, but also non-sequence order means random order also you have to think. For example, class D, class C range 120, 192 to 223. Okay, class A range 0 to 127. Class E 242 255. So random range. Class B subnet mask, default subnet mask 255.255.0.0. Okay, so like this random wise also if you practice you can easily tell. Okay, so next, one batch I wanted to ask what is a subnet mask for a class D, class D. So some people are thinking, some people are very silent. Then I trust again. So one person told class B IP address. Okay, they said I don't know sir class D IP address. Some people. So class D don't have any subnet mask. See this? Subnet mask is not there for a class D and class E. So it's a very simple tricky. So the question is came from what we know, but not what we practice. The way what we practice straightforward. So if question is like what is a class C subnet mask 255.255.255.0 class C subnet mask. What is a subnet mask for a class E? It is there, not there, maybe, may not be, like that. So you have to tell sir class A, class B, class C are unicast addresses. They are having subnet mask, and class D and class E. Class is a multicast. Class E is a unused, like a reserved for research and certain places. So we don't have any subnet mask for that one. Okay. So class D and class C don't have any subnet mask. Like something like they ask. So can you tell me what is class F range? Again, dot. So it can be something around 256 to 300, right? The maximum size of the octet is 255, not more than 255. And we never discuss about class F, means class F is not there. Okay, that's the thing. Yes, class C IP address if you are using, so you will get a number of zeros. You can see 255 means all are ones. This is the only one part is 0. So 3 network portions, network, host portion, right? Network. Compulsory. First 3 portions are same. Last portion is host portion. So we'll take it as a host. Okay. So one host portion means 8 bits. So 2 to the power of 8 minus 2. It is a 254 number of hosts we can able to use. Means one class C IP address for a 254 computers. One class C. So I have 100 computers, class C. I have 200 computers, class C. I have 50 computers, class C is suitable. Here it is in a class B, network, host. 2 host portions means each host portion is 8 bit. So here it is a 16 bit. 2 to the power of 16 minus 2. So what is this minus 2? We'll discuss that one later. Okay, so here it is 65,534. Okay, you can calculate. Why Windows are not working? Two to the power of 16. It is minus 2. 65,534. It means you take a class B IP address. How many number of systems we can connect for a single class B network? It's almost 65. For example, I have 100 computers. Class C is suitable. 200 computers. Class C is suitable. 300 computers. Class B. You must go to class B. 400, 500, 1000, 2000, 3000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. All are class B is a suitable. 65,000. Class B is suitable. 70,000. Then we'll go to the 70,000 computers are more than 65,534 computers are there in your network. So class B not suitable. You have to go to class A. So network is one portion, 3 host portions. So it is 2 to the power of 24 minus 2. It is 1. Yeah, we'll calculate and do it. Why should we waste our energy? Minus 2. So 16,777,214. Okay. So here it is. Very simply say 16 million systems means 70,000, 80,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakh, 4 lakh, 5 lakh, like that. So 16 million computers we can able to connect it. So if you are going with the lakhs and crores part, so you can go like this. Meaning is 1 crore 67 lakhs 77,214 computers we can connect as a single logical network in a class A. So that is a total network ranges. Anyway, I just wanted to repeat it because this is also very important question. So what is this private IP addresses? Again, guys, we are in a LAN network. So we don't require a WAN communication when you are communicating in the LAN. Okay. So with a normal single switch, you can able to communicate within the network. Okay. So when we communicate within LAN, also we need an IP address. So okay, when we communicate within the LAN means private we should use private IP addresses only. Next, private IP address, not routable addresses in internet. This is also called as non-routable addresses in internet, or not routable in internet. That is a very better way to understand way, but it is non-routable addresses. Okay, so a private IP address is not routable in network, because so whatever IP address I have in my laptop, internet don't know that IP address. Okay, so otherwise I can't show my IP address, right? If anyone knows my my original IP address, okay, so if someone will hack, right? If I know your IP address, I can hack you, but it is not true. How it is not true? Why? Because of we never use direct public IP addresses for a PC. We are not in America anyway. Okay, in some telephone companies directly provide it, to your laptop or desktop a particular IP address to you. Okay, so of course you will traceable with your address. Everything is traceable because of you are using Google Chrome. Okay, so obviously through your network connectivity, through your network subscription, so you will get people will get that information. Okay, that is possibility is there. Locations, your physical locations, because of the Google Maps linking and your internet connections, internet subscriptions. That way people know it, like the government or maybe a ISP provider know about you. But in generally, you shared your screen. I've seen your IP address. That is not your IP address. That is your only private IP address. Okay, the private IP addresses are works in the local LAN network only. Okay, so IP addresses, local LAN. LAN means local. LAN means local. Local network, like a intranet, LAN, or any word you can use it. Private network, anything you can use it. Okay, so we will see the ranges. What IP addresses we use it in a local kind of stuff. Class A, class B, class C. Class A. So class A is so 10.0.0.0.0. Total range I am writing, guys. Useful range is different. So using range, like I have a system, I want to use 10 dot series, like a 10.0.0.0.1. Start with the 1, not with a 0. Start with the 1, and 10.255.255.254. That is the last IP address. We can use it in the 10 series, and it is a single means class A default network. It is, so no change in it. Here it is. So from this IP address to this IP address, we can use it. Why not this, guys? This is the starting IP. This IP address represent this IP address represent this IP address represent what we can say network ID. So look at here, 10.0.0.0. It is a class A IP address. It is a represent network ID. So network ID is same for both IP addresses. They will communicate. Network ID is different. They can't communicate. So you go with the one by one IP address. You keep goes on, right? So like this is for example 254. 10.0.0.255, that is not end of series because of 10 should not be changed. In this particular network, it is a class A. First octet must be same. Means 10, 10, 10 must be continue. Up to like this 10 dot 0 dot 0 dot 2 dot 0. It will keep going like a 10 dot 255 dot 255 dot 254 10 dot 255 255 255 11 dot 0 dot 0 dot 0. Then it is another network. This is another network. So it is a last IP address is called a broadcast address, broadcast ID or address. Okay, see network ID, broadcast ID. We cannot assign network ID and broadcast ID to anyone. So once you reach the last IP address in the series, okay, you will go to new network ID automatically or complete or not complete. So next network is came. So again it will start like 11.0.0.1. Okay, it keep goes up to 11.255.255.255. This is the last. Not the last but one. This last button. This is again broadcast ID. Okay, guys. Again, it becomes 12.0.0.0. Again, it is network ID. Okay. So simply it keep repeats thing. So make sure that is. So 11 dot series is different. 10 dot series is different. So why it is different? Both network IDs are different. Okay. This PC can communicate to this PC, but this PC cannot communicate it to this PC. Why? Because of both are different networks. That's why we do -2. That's why we do -2. Why -2? Because two IP addresses we don't use to assign to the any adapter. Okay, that's why if you are seeing like this, it means complete part. This is means that total range part means using part. Okay. So next class B range is 254.16.0.02 170.16.0.0.2 31 172.31.255.255. Okay, of course you want assignment range 172.16. Two octets must be same, guys. If you put 127.217, it is a different network. But this is a complete range. You can assign from 0.1 to 172.31.255.254. Why I'm giving the second part? Why? Because in some textbook it represent like that, so people will get confused. So here it is 192.168.0.02. Okay, 192.168.255.255. This is very easy. So 168.0.1. Class, it's a class C. First three must be same. 172.16. 255.254. So this is the valid range. Okay, but network are different. So this is exactly say not at all required. Better try to understand. If you see 10 number starting, it's a class A private IP address. If you see 172.16, 172.17, 172.18, like that, 172.30, 172.31, 172.16 to 172.31. This is class B private IP address. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. So these are all entire thing comes under private. 172 35 dot or 36.0.34. This is public IP. This is public IP. This is private IP. This is public IP. This is private IP. This is again private IP. This is private IP. This is public IP. Okay, so that much is difference is there. Compulsory check it, guys. 172 is there, but in secondary 16 to 31, anything you can use it. But different networks, guys. Again, 172.16.0.1, 172.17.0.1. Both are different networks. Both are different. It's a class B. First two must be same. Both are different networks. This range is 172.16.0.1 to 172.16.255.254. This is thing. 255 broadcast 0.0 is a network ID. This is the valid IP addresses. From this IP to this IP, we can assign to systems. So their network is finished at here. So obviously this is another network. Okay. Class C again, it is 192. There is no confusion. 192.168.0.1 is there. For example, it's a starting IP. 170.168.0.254 is the end of the IP address. 192.168.1.1 is a different network. This is a different network. So it is a class C. First three must be same. This is total IP address range. This is the first three must be same. Okay, so make sure that is. And from this, you can look at the first two. 192.168. If you see, 192.168 is a private IP address. 192.169 public IP address. Public IP address. Okay, so not only 192, guys, not only looking at 192, also look at the both the things. Okay, so public or private diff side. Again, what are the IP address I have in my PC? That IP address don't know by publicly. For example, in a Google, okay, if you type what is my IP address, okay, if you type what is my IP address like this, what is my IP address, it shows your public IP, not a private IP. You go to your command prompt and check the IP configure. Config, you will get your IP address. It is your private IP address. Use it to communicate within the LAN network. Yes, there is a small explanation is also there about a private and public part. We'll try. No, okay, we cannot write anything here. So look at here. This is my home or office. Okay, so I have a computers. Guys, understanding your IP addresses and private and public IP addresses. Okay, this is all computers are connected to network. Which topology it is? Star topology. For example, this is a PCA. Okay, this is PCB, PCC, PCD, PCE, PCF, G, H. So many pieces. Okay, PCA want to communicate to PC C, for example. Okay, like this. Okay, so we don't require internet, right? So this is a simple LAN network. We need a LAN network, simple LAN network. To communicate from A to C, we don't require public IP address. Private is enough. Private is enough. For example, you have some remote server in the internet. For example, google.com. For example, we are communicating to google.com. Right? It is not in your office, right? It is outside. You want to communicate. How you communicate? Through your router. So it is connected to your router. The router, this interface is called a gateway. And of course, there is a modem or a built-in modem kind of stuff, think like that. It's a built-in modem kind of stuff. So request, you'll go like this. So request is go to, for example, BPC want to communicate. So request go to switch to your router or direct router. So up to here it is private. Up to here it is private. It's your LAN. Up to your private. Up to here. So this is your gateway. Right? This is your gateway. You are communicating within the network. You don't require gateway, but when you are communicating outside, you need a gateway. This is your gateway, default gateway. So what are the IP addresses configured here? That is your default gateway IP address. Routers interface towards the LAN network. So that is a default gate. So when you are communicating to outside of your network, you need a default gateway. So this is the router, okay, and modem kind of stuff. So what we are doing here, so I am connected to my ISP provider. This is ISP. Problem is when you are communicating outside, you need a public IP address. You need a public IP address. You have a internet, right? So you are connected through ISP. ISP send your request to google.com. But here is a problem. We need a public IP address. We need a public IP address. Without public IP address, you can't able to communicate. But you don't have it. What to do now? This ISP provider take your request, send your request to outside with some public IP address. With some public IP address. So internally you are having a private IP, but when you are communicating outside, you are communicating with a public IP address, which is taken care by ISP provider in generally. So request goes up to google.com. Google.com think you are sending check the request and understand. Sorry, it check the request. It received a request, and what it will get? It will get your public IP only. You don't know your private IP. What is the IP address? Your here. This IP don't know by google.com. Google.com knows your public IP. That's why when you go to Google and type what is my IP address, then you will get your public IP. Google don't know what is your private IP. Okay, so this is one case one. Second case in the private IP, here it is. So this is the technique called this technique. We call it they use a technique called a port address translation. That is called PAT. They use a PAT. Now we are getting internet using PAT technique. PAT technique. What is this PAT technique? Is simple. So these are all pieces having a separate private IP addresses, right? All PCs are having different private. For my laptop having a one kind of private IP. So I have another desktop is there, mobile phone is there. These are all having a same type, same network, but different host, different IP private networks. Okay, sorry, private IP addresses, right? 192.168.0.10, 0.11, 0.12, 0.14, 0.15, 0.22, 0.31, 0.43, like that. So I have IP addresses in my PCs. Within the local communication, we don't require default gateway, routers, internet connections. A to B communication not required. B2C communication not required. But when you are communicating outside, so we need a default gateway. Through default gateway, you can able to send information outside. So finally, you are connected to ISP. ISP will, instead of your private IP address sending, it will send a public only, because without a public, you can't able to communicate in the internet. With the public IP address, you can do it using the technique called a PAT technique, port address translation. Okay, so this is direct point how we are using, but originally there is a NAT point is there, so we have to go to that point also. Here, look at this, guys. This is my organization. Sorry, I have an organization. There is some computers are there. Okay, these are the some computers are there. For example, this is the server. In my organization, this is my server. Now, so these are the some client PCs. Okay, for example, PCA, PCB, and server 1. So for example, it is my web server. So there is a website I want to access. For example, I want to communicate S1. So I want to open this web server web page here. I don't require any WAN connectivity, because server and client both are in a local LAN network. Server and client both are in a same LAN network. That is called intranet. That is called a intranet. I don't require any default gateways, public IP addresses, or routers, modem things not required, because I'm in the intranet. For example, someone is in the internet. Someone in the internet need to access your website. They want to access your website. Okay, someone we don't know. So for example, here it is. Pawan is there. Pawan want to access my website from my web server, but I'm in a private network. So what to do? How to connect it to a router? First of all, how to connect it to a router, switch, or something like that. Router, modem kind. I am like I'm connected to router and modem kind of stuff. Right, this is the network I am connected. So yeah, I forget to mention one point here, but I made a point, but I not specified that is the point part. Okay, look at here, guys. I will tell a point here. So here BPC want to communicate google.com. So BPC can able to communicate google.com from BPC to switch to this router, modem, ISP to internet, google.com, and google.com can able to reply up to ISP, because it don't know your IP address and your location. It knows this public IP, deliver the reply to public IP address. So ISP understand to whom this exact messages came. It will forward to our PC. It will forward to our PC. So this is called a PAT technique. So originally you are not showing your IP address to anyone. So it is your IP address valid in your local LAN network. So your ISP provider forward packets to through internet using a public IP address. Okay, and once the destination machine or a destination server received a request and replied with a public IP address as a destination is that public IP address only. Okay, so once ISP provider received a packet from the remote server and understand original machine, whose original machine, it will forward to that one only. So that is the point I didn't specify additionally. So here it is. The second diagram, my server and client both are in the same network, that is called a intranet. Okay, that is called a intranet. So in internet, so I am accessing server outside of my network through internet, I can able to access. Okay, so that's the communication part. Somewhere I'm not able to connect properly. Yeah. For example, here is a Pawan is there. Pawan want to send a packet to FPC. Okay, so he asked a F guy so that what is your IP address? He type it. He given a private IP. So whatever the system is there. So you give this private IP. So what is done? Pawan is done through internet, because Pawan is not in the local network. Through internet, is trying to reach the FPC. Okay, is trying to get a access of FPC through internet. So you send a request to the internet outside and try to reach the FPC. He never. Why? Because of the similar IP address is given to multiple system. For example, I have this IP address in my system. In the world, there is a lakhs of people or millions of people or billions of people are having same IP address, same IP network, same IP address. Most common IP address or IP network is 192.168.0.0 network is the most common network. Okay, first most common network, not foremost. First most common network. 192 series, class C series mainly. 192.168 is a private series. 0.0 is a network. So 0.1, 0.2 like that. So it's a 137 IP address. So okay, that is can be there for millions of people. So obviously, when a user is send a request through internet, we don't know because it's a private IP. Pawan don't know my public IP. Pawan don't know my public. Maybe Pawan may know public IP by you are asking. So for example, I check my public IP address through google.com or some request, or maybe you send a request so that Pawan know your public IP. So Pawan is trying to send a packet from his side. I didn't request. Remember guys, I didn't request Pawan. Pawan is sending a packet to me through my using my public IP. So you got my public IP. I said this is my public IP address. Okay, from google.com something I searched it. So what is my public IP? What Google knows what is my public IP. So I send it to Pawan. So Pawan got my public IP. So then packet reach up to ISP provider. I didn't request. Pawan is sending directly. What happened at ISP? Check the request, check the packet from the Pawan and see, yes, this is our public IP address only, but who is exactly the person? APC, BPC, DPC, EPC or FPC? ISP provider don't know, because if you are sending it, ISP routers store your request sending packet, okay, and public IP mapping. So your your local IP and public IP mapping is there. If you are sending through ISP routers maintain a mapping of your local IP and global IP mapping they will maintain. But whenever outsider is sending a packet to you directly with the public IP address, there is no map technique is happened that's why they cannot able to forward. So if you know my private IP address or if you know direct my public IP address, you cannot reach my system. Okay, if you know my private IP or if you know my public IP, you cannot reach my system because same public IP address used for multiple computers because it's a PAT technique, port address translation. Port address translation. This is the part I am trying to say. One more part is there, guys. Here it is. Yeah, this part I didn't cover properly. This is the PAT, port address translation. Okay, what happened when you are sending a message or you are sending a request through ISP provider, ISP routers maps your local IP and public IP with a port number. That's why it is a port address translation. So one more point in a port address translation, APC, BPC, CPC, DPC, EFGH, all are having same single public IP address only. They're all having a single public IP. Each individually they are having different private IP addresses, but when they are communicating outside, all are having different public IP, same public IP. So guys, you can check it your mobile phone, laptop, and the other mobile phones kind of stuff. Check the IP address in your mobile phone. If you are connected to any Wi-Fi internet, check your mobile phone, laptop, desktop, all the IP addresses, and also check it public IP addresses. I already told how to check it. Go to Google. What is my IP address? Google will tell you what is your public IP. Okay, so all 10 systems having individual private IP addresses, but publicly they are having a single public IP address only. So how it maps using some port numbers. So A is sending a packet to outside of the network. So ISP will take the A's private IP address and map to public IP address plus port addresses it will mention. So that's why. So when you are getting reply from the remote, so your ISP routers understand this public IP written address we are getting. So this is binded to some private. So forward the packet to that private. So it will private IP address. We can reach it to our station. So this is PAT technique. Originally we have to tell NAT then PAT. Okay, but I told PAT directly. Okay, these are about a PAT. What are we are using? PAT, port address translation. This is also called as a NAT overload. This is also called as NAT overload. Okay, NAT overload. Next part is, guys, this is my local server. So already I told this story, right? This is my local server. I am accessing from A to S1. It is through intranet. This is called intranet communication through internet network. I'm accessing. So I'm not using any internet for this one. For example, Pawan want to access my S1 directly. I need a public IP address, of course. Okay. For example, I'm accessing google.com. Google.com public IP address. Yahoo.com public IP address. So with the public IP address only, people can able to access. But you cannot put your server directly in the public network. Directly public IP address access we cannot put it for protection purpose, basic protection purpose. You cannot put your server in publicly. You cannot put your server publicly. So that is a not good theory. So what I have done, I take a router. Okay, I take a router. On router, I will configure, or maybe my ISP, especially I will ask for a static kind of stuff. Okay, so what I will do, normally my router, I'm talking in a dedicated connection manner, not a broadband manner. So this is connected to internet, right? So this is outside network. In my router, what I'll do, I'll take this private IP. This is my private IP address. Take the private IP. When the private IP is there, so there is a assign one public IP address. Okay, this private is assigned to public IP. So when it is communicating outside public IP, so Pawan send a request with this power. Sorry. So my server having a private IP address, but people required to access my server through internet. So we need a public IP address. So what I have done, I take my private IP and map in the router. This private IP address is mapped to this public IP address. Okay, like this. So it is like a one-to-one type, one private, one public. So I have a two private IP addresses. So I need a two public IP address. In these cases, multiple private IP addresses. Okay, single public IP address. Here it is not like that. One private IP, one public IP, one private IP, one public IP, like that one model. Okay, so when Pawan is trying to communicate, so I took a example, name is Pawan, so he will communicate with this public. So when he send a packet, I received a packet with this public IP and check it, there is a map point is there now, so mapping to this private IP and forward the packet to here. For example, I have a 10 servers are there, 10 servers I want to put it in a public, 10 servers I want to put it in a public. So 10 private IP addresses maps to 10 public IP addresses. People send a request with a public IP and the router will translate this public IP address into private IP address. This one-to-one mechanism, we call it as a NAT. We call it as a NAT, network address translation. Network address translation. So here it is, NAT. Network address translation. PAT is also called a NAT overload. Port address translation. In a NAT there is a static NAT and a dynamic NAT. Static NAT and dynamic NAT. Very simple. NAT means one private, exactly say local, is binded to one public IP. There is a terminology local and global or public. Inside global, inside our thing, that words are there, but I'm not going that one. So private means inside, private means inside or a local. Public is, so simply say it is global or a outside communication with the public IP address. Okay, so from like this is the mapping. So dynamic is not like that. So dynamic is a different part. So dynamic means so many to many. So it's a one-to-one. It is a many to many type. Many to many means, for example, 10 private, 5 public, for example. Okay, this is the dynamic NAT. So I don't like dynamic net. I like a static net or dynamic net, but like this. Okay, here it's also example. For example, this is my private IP 101. So this is my public. Here it is. This is public IP. One server. This is server 1. Server 2. Server 2 having a private IP. So like a one-to-one binding. So you will get a request from outside with a public IP, and your router translate into the private. Okay, it remove this IP address and put this IP address and forward to S2. So once you receive, you'll understand. And same thing, when you are sending, your source IP is this one. After router, source IP is this one. Okay, so when you are receiving packet having destination, this is the destination address. Once router to inside, this is the destination address. So this is about your NAT, guys. Understand NAT. So don't worry about dynamic NAT. Understand NAT. NAT means so a one-to-one come type. It is a one-to-one type. Okay, single. So one private to one public example. Okay, so when you are receiving a packet, the destination address is this address at router. Okay, the router translate into the your private. Again, destination packet will be in the destination IP address will be changes and received to S1. For example, S2 is sending, so source IP is this one. Okay, source IP is this one. So once it is crossed the router, after translation, the source IP after translation, this is the source IP. So destination means destination device or a PC knows only your public IP, not your private IP. Next, what is a NAT overload? Port address translation part. Guys, PAT, it is many to one, or we can say all to one. It means like we can say all private IP to one public IP. Okay, normally one to one. Now everything all to one or everything to one, any to one. Okay, everything to one or any to one. Understand? Sometimes some limitation they will put it. So sometimes they will put a some limitation means or some range to some range of IP addresses. Okay, some range of IP addresses, range or we can say many to one public. Or two public, three public. So it is mostly it is many to one type. Many to one type. Okay, so it use port number technique to map local IP to global IP. So this is PAT address, guys. Again, port address translations is different. So NAT, a user can able to send a request with your public IP. Your router or your ISP router will translate into your local IP address. Okay, so outsider can able to send a packet to your public. The public IP address is translated at your router or maybe at ISP router to your local IP. You will receive the packet and you can able to send the packet also. But here in this PAT technique, you can send a request and receive a response from the outside to inside. Okay, you can send it and you can receive it. If you send, then only you will receive. Okay, others from internet cannot send a packet to you directly. For example, I want to give you a packet to you for your IP address. I can't do it. For your public IP, I cannot able to send it. So most internet, mainly in India, we use PAT technique in a internet communication. So in the server side, like you will get a google.com IP address. Simply go to ping google.com, you'll get a google.com IP address. That is the not main google.com IP address. It can be a public IP address. It is a public IP address, but not assigned to a Google server directly. So it can be a some NAT technique they use to hide their private IP addresses. Okay. That is used for management. So this is the part of private IP addresses and NAT and PAT technique. So this part is also covered, guys. If in case any questions regarding to it, so compulsory check it. Yeah. It's 142, no problem. So I don't know how many are there, how many are late. Yeah, some are there, no problem. Okay. Yeah. So few questions only I will forward, guys. Okay. So I will forward only few questions. So go through that questions and write a notes and take a picture and send me. Only question I will give you 5-6 questions. Okay. So write a notebook. So write on a notebook and take a picture of it. Put it in a group. Put it in a group. No problem. Copy paste also no problem. I don't mind about it. Few questions. Like morning I showed what is the OS types and are random questions. Same thing questions. If you don't get that particular question, already I told where the answers will available. You will search in a Google, you will take it from my notes, your copy pasted other questions answer. I don't mind about it. I need to take a question, write down the answer, forward it to me. Okay, write down the answer on notebook or a page, take a picture, put it in a group. If someone copied your answer also, no problem for me. Okay, so try to understand that is like at least you are doing an activity, so other people will also feel happy with that. Okay, guys, people practice the version test. You must cross the version test also. So practice for that one. Any techniques you can ask directly, sir. So then he will help you better. Okay. Once you cross that barrier, so then you will do better. Okay. So my suggestion is, oh, okay, I'll stop the recording.